Immediately after winning the U.S. general election, Donald Trump announced he would put 100% tariffs on all goods coming from the BRICS nations if they continued their de-dollarization agenda. This seemed to give BRICS, especially China and India, a major shock. It's because when Trump just randomly said to put 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, the country came to a halt, and Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, rushed to meet Trump and get a better deal. But what if we say things are quite different when it comes to BRICS? Unlike small nations who want to appease the United States and surrender to the bullying behavior, BRICS nations know how to handle the pressure. Despite the tariff threat, BRICS has vowed to continue its de-dollarization agenda, even announcing to do it at a faster rate during Trump's presidency. How will that work, and how BRICS has Trump under control? In this video, let's find out. Donald Trump's rise to the presidency brought with it a promise to uphold the supremacy of the US dollar on the global stage. His rhetoric was clear. Any nation daring to pursue de-dollarization would face severe economic consequences, including the threat of 100% tariffs on goods entering the US. Trump's strategy centered on making the dollar indispensable while imposing punitive measures on those questioning its dominance. Interestingly, his administration thought of tariffs as a tool to force nations into compliance, a signal to the world that the US would not tolerate any challenge to its financial supremacy. However, this approach underestimated the growing power of the BRICS nations and their dissatisfaction with a dollar-centric system. For years, emerging economies had been seeking alternatives to the dollar, recognizing the risks of dependency on a currency that could be weaponized through sanctions and economic leverage. In self-manifestation, Trump's policies only confirmed their fears. However, Trump is in misconception this time because he believes he can pull off the same results as he did last time. Back in 2016, after Trump's victory, the dollar surged in value, strengthening against global currencies, including the Chinese yuan, Russian ruble, Brazilian real, Indian rupee, and South African rand. This surge may have pleased US policymakers, but for the BRICS nations, it was the beginning of a counteraction against the dollar. That's because a stronger dollar made trade more expensive for emerging economies, forcing them to pay a premium for essential goods and services. This overvaluation fueled inflation in developing nations and disrupted their economic planning, creating a direct incentive to explore alternative currency systems. This was going steadily until Trump threatened to impose a 100% tariff, an action that is being met with both defiance and pragmatism. Leaders within the BRICS alliance, particularly Russian President Vladimir Putin and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, saw the threats not as a deterrent, but as confirmation that the US was doubling down on its financial dominance. Putin openly mocked the US strategy, pointing out that America's share in the global economy was shrinking while BRICS nations were steadily growing. In other words, he said it's not the US who would decide which currency will be used for international trade. Lula questioned the very premise of the dollar's supremacy, advocating for trade in local currencies and challenging the historical decision to enshrine the dollar as the global reserve currency after the gold standard was abandoned. This shows a different approach of the BRICS leaders. They are no longer in the mood to surrender. Rather, they are ready to resist the bullying. Russia led the charge, settling over 80% of its trade with Kazakhstan in rubles or tenge, and extending this model to other neighboring countries. The Commonwealth of Independent States, a regional bloc dominated by Russia, reported that 85% of cross-border transactions were conducted in local currencies, further undermining the dollar's role in the region. These developments signaled a coordinated effort not just within BRICS, but also among allied nations to sideline the dollar in favor of regional alternatives. But things don't stop here. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Africa's geopolitics, economy, and changing landscape. Let's continue now. China, the economic powerhouse of the BRICS alliance, also ramped up its efforts to challenge the dollar. Beijing expanded the use of the yuan in trade agreements, particularly with African and Asian nations, creating bilateral arrangements that bypass the dollar entirely. India followed suit, leveraging its trade ties with Russia to establish rupee-ruble payment mechanisms. Interestingly, even after Trump's threat, BRICS nations are continuing to trade in local currencies and carry on the broader de-dollarization agenda. However, there have been some profound developments. For instance, analysts believe that countries that have been U.S. allies can adopt a more covert de-dollarization strategy. Yet the de-dollarization will continue, and these countries will ensure they don't make it too open. This strategy aligns with what BRICS wants. De-dollarization is never an overnight mission where all countries will dump the dollar and start trading in their local currencies. Rather, it's a gradual process, and that's exactly how the dollar became an international currency. In this respect, BRICS is more than successful in their mission. Not only that, but now, more countries will join this initiative, making their economies sanctions and dollar-proof. Countries like Turkey, Malaysia, and Azerbaijan expressed interest in joining BRICS, drawn by its vision of a multipolar financial system less vulnerable to U.S. interference. However, the secret goal of de-dollarization will not be proclaimed openly to avoid sanctions and tariffs. But will Trump's threat work for the time being? It turns out that Trump's plan to use pressure to force countries to give up de-dollarization will backfire. This will only speed up the efforts to get rid of the USD, even by countries who earlier trusted the Western financial system. Critics of Trump's approach argued that his threats were hollow and counterproductive. Imposing 100% tariffs would not weaken BRICS but would instead harm American consumers. Higher import costs would be passed on to end users, fueling inflation and undermining domestic economic stability. Far from deterring de-dollarization, these measures can risk accelerating it by alienating trade partners and pushing them closer to BRICS. Furthermore, the dollar's global dominance has long provided the U.S. with significant advantages, including cheaper borrowing costs and enhanced geopolitical influence. Yet, this power comes with a cost: the need for continuous trade deficits to sustain global dollar liquidity. Trump's strategy to address these deficits through tariffs creates a dangerous feedback loop. By restricting dollar circulation in international trade, he risks undermining the very system that underpins the dollar's status as a reserve currency. Benefiting from this, BRICS has already set the concrete and tangible framework in place for the next currency. For years, they have developed mechanisms to conduct trade in local currencies, accumulate gold reserves, and establish alternative financial systems. And now, Trump's tariff threats are unlikely to deter this momentum. Instead, they could backfire by accelerating the transition to alternative trade systems. Targeted nations would have even greater incentives to strengthen regional trade mechanisms and bypass the dollar altogether. Already, the BRICS countries, for example, are advancing payment systems like Russia's SPFS to circumvent reliance on SWIFT, reducing exposure to U.S. financial leverage. The unintended consequences of Trump's approach extend beyond BRICS. Companies in countries affected by U.S. tariffs are already shifting production to regions like Southeast Asia and Mexico to sidestep economic barriers. This reconfiguration of global supply chains diminishes U.S. influence while weakening the dollar's centrality in international commerce. Paradoxically, Trump's policies could also strengthen the dollar in the short term by driving up its demand as a safe haven currency. However, an overvalued dollar would become increasingly unaffordable for global transactions, pushing nations further toward alternative currencies. The contradictions in Trump's strategy highlight a deeper issue: the tariff dilemma, which describes the tension between national economic goals and the global demand for a reserve currency. By restricting global access to dollars through tariffs, Trump risks undermining the liquidity required to sustain the dollar's reserve status. While his rhetoric aims to project strength, it shows the fragility of a system dependent on global confidence in U.S. financial stability. The long-term implications are clear. Trump's efforts to preserve the dollar's hegemony through tariffs and sanctions are likely to accelerate its decline. BRICS nations and other emerging economies are advancing initiatives to reduce their dependence on the dollar, bolstered by shared grievances against U.S. economic dominance. In trying to defend the dollar's supremacy, Trump risks quickening the transition to a more multipolar financial system, where regional and local currencies play a central role in global trade. Rather than halting de-dollarization, his actions may become its most powerful catalyst. What do you think? Will Trump take BRICS' agenda of de-dollarization seriously and start a brutal trade war? Or do you feel the 100% tariffs are just rhetoric that Trump will use throughout his tenure while doing nothing of a tangible nature? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on how China and other BRICS nations would respond if Trump puts the 100% tax. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: African politics, economy, and increasing power. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Tell us what you think in the comment section. Like and share the video, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our African videos. It's the best way to support us.